Thank you. So I'm Emma, or Emmanuel, if you really want to have a mouthful. Um, I'm the co-founder of a small company in Belgium. You might have heard of me regarding one of those two libraries, the RSchema adapter and Ember CLI Credites. I'm not going to talk about that today, so if you want to talk about those libraries to me, just find me in the halls. Um, Today we're going to talk about refactoring, and as I said, we're part of a small business, and we do mostly remote work, and sometimes we find projects that have already been started for a while by different teams, and sometimes it's a mess. And so that's how I got the idea for this talk. Once I got into a project, I came there and said, oh yeah, we have to improve the maintainability and performance of this feature. And I looked at the feature, and it was this method that was several screens long with nested ifs and for loops and stuff. And it was not readable. And I had no idea where to start to get it faster because I could not read the code. So before we get started, what is actually refactoring? Well, refactoring can be many things. If somebody tells you, hey, this is the one recipe for refactoring, well, don't listen to them, because refactoring is a lot of different things, and so there cannot be only one recipe. Refactoring can be something as simple as renaming one single variable all over your code because you decided that finally that name that you gave it was not that smart of a name after all. It can be updating your code style and making your code base PEP compliant, for example, if it was not for starters. That's one sort of refactoring too. Refactoring can also be rewriting a single method, function, or class to make it more maintainable. Just one, you don't have to do the whole code. But refactoring can also be rewriting that same thing to make it just more readable and to make it easier for other people to add other features. And that's mainly what we're going to be looking at today. And finally, refactoring can be rewriting almost everything and just keeping the name of the project. And so this is the kind of method that I want. Yeah, it's sideways. Did you notice? Because I didn't have enough room to put it vertically, so I had to put it sideways. This is the kind of mess that I was talking about. And other than the fact that it's sideways, you probably are having trouble reading all of this. You have no idea what it does. It's just comments. It doesn't do anything. And this is something that is really common, actually, to find this. And it is so common that people on the internet have made some kind of challenges. It's not really a challenge because there is no winner or loser, but it's an exercise to make you refactor some code. This one is a Gilded Rose Kata. There is going to be other ones. I forgot on the first slide there was the URL for the slides. I will go back to the first slide at the end of the talk. All these are working links, so you can click on the slides and you will have all the links. But you can also take pictures. So this is the first link is where I got the code. It's really nice repo with the original code in many different languages, including Python 2. Not 3, sorry. But we will work with Python 2. And the second URL is where I pushed all the steps of the refactoring that we're going to do together. But this is the first section of the afternoon of the last day. So I guess I need to keep you awake. So I'm going to be asking you some questions. I'm going to ask you to participate. Are you ready to help me refactor this?
Yes. Yes.
That's 4 people. Okay, thank you. So this is a new formula that I'm trying today. I hope it works well. First of all, so we're going to read the requirements of this refactoring because we're new. We're new in the company. It looked fine. We got a nice contract, but it's our first day on the team. So here's the assignment, and I'm going to read it with you. Hi, and welcome to the team Gilded Rose. As you know, we're a small inn with a prime location in a prominent city run by a friendly innkeeper named Allison, or you can. Don't call me Alison, I'm Emma, it's not me. We also buy and sell only the finest goods. Unfortunately, our goods are constantly degrading in quality as they approach their sell-by date. We have a system in place that updates our inventory for us. That's good. It was developed by a no-nonsense type named Leroy, who was moved on to new adventures. Your task is to add a new feature to our system so that we can begin selling a new category of item. First, an introduction to our system. So this document is very important because that's basically the requirements for what we are going to have to do for the next hour. And we're going to go back to this document every so often. The first thing is that all items have a selling value, which denotes the number of days we have to sell the items by. Then the quality degrades. They have a quality value which denotes how valuable the item is, and all items degrades as the sell-by date comes closer. I'm going to stop reading now. We will come back to this later, and we're going to start looking at the code for this. What do you think? Do you want to touch this? No?
Are there tests?
Yes, tests. Okay, that's a good start. We're going to do tests. We're definitely going to do tests. And what is nice with this is that somebody actually did us a favor and also provided some fixtures, so we can run the current code on the fixtures and have the output, store the output, because right now there is absolutely no test on this code. So our baseline is that we've got some fixtures and we know that the code works, so if we change something, we have to be able to replicate the same result. But before we did that, this is some kind of simple example, but something that I like to do is that I like to look at the complexity of the current code. And there's a tool for that in Python that's called Radon. It's linked in the slide. And Radon allows you to calculate the complexity of your code in various different ways. And this is computing the complexity. And you see that our update quality methods got a C, so it's not very good. I try to often run my entire code by that, and in production code, C is okay, but when you're starting to get D, E, and Fs, it's really bad. But as one C every once in a while can happen, there are other metrics. This is the one we're going to be using today. And we're also running the fixtures, so you can run the fixtures for as many days as you want. So here the first thing I'm doing is that I'm running all the fixtures and storing the results in a text file so that we can just update our codes, rerun the fixtures, and do a vim diff between the two text files. This is not tests, but when there is no test, being able to output the result of something and compare it later and doing a vim diff between two things, it's a hack, but it works and it can save your life. Now, next thing I want to do, we said we wanted to write some tests. And to be able to write some tests, I'm looking here at the test fixture program that was sent to us. I'm not able to resize that window. Okay, great. So we've got all the items directly in the test program. So the first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to take the data and put it somewhere else. So I'm taking all this. And this is live, which is probably a bad idea. I didn't sacrifice any kitten. But this is going to be the only live part almost of this talk. So from gilded rose, import item, since this is the class that we're using for all our data, is the class item. And back in this, here we have to import items from data. And as you might see, my Vim is not... I have two spaces, it's okay. My Vim doesn't really like the code. It's not PEP compliant, that's okay, we don't care for now. So I'm going to quit all this to save it and quit and see if it still works. I guess I have to quit both files. So let's run the test again. And it doesn't work because I broke my code. It was a really bad idea to do that part live. So let's go back to syntax error, import items from data. From data import. Yes, that's thank you, thanks a lot. That's why it's fun to do things like that. And it's not the right file. And the fun thing is that I don't know why, but I don't see the last line of text on my screen right now. And who could guess what language I've been programming in for the past few days? JavaScript, thank you. And so if I run this, syntax error word expected. Okay, let's just trust me. We got the same results because now I'm going to check out the next. I have two Pythons. Yes, let's not worry because if we do, we're going to run overtime. I'm going to just check out the next revision because I did plan this. I did plan that my coding was going to be awful when I was live. So everything is in a repo. What I'm going to do now is basically I'm going to go and check out the next revision each time. Here we have our data, and so we would like to write some tests. The first thing that we want to do, since if we go back to our description, we're going to be able to see that once the cell date is passed, the item degrades twice as fast. For certain items, the rate is different, and so on and so on. So the first thing I want to do is that I want to write a few test helpers that will allow me to get the different items that I need to be able to test their behaviors. So back to my test, here you can see that I've already written some code. This one is going to work. Here I'm going to stop and say, if you wanted a general refactoring talk, you're in the wrong place because we're going to do a lot of things that are only just working for Python. Because Python is going to be really helpful. I said this is an exercise that's available in different programming languages. And Python is really, really helpful to give us things that will allow us to work faster. For example, we have the first thing here, we are declaring a property, which is not possible in all languages. And we're declaring a property on the test, and this is going to be our regular items that age in the normal way. And it's a simple list inclusion. I'm going to switch this. So what I'm doing is that I'm just returning all the items that are not special items. This is a simple list inclusion. Is everybody here familiar with list inclusion, or do you want to know how they work? Okay, and so the test helpers, we're going to do that for every type of items that we want to check. And what we want to check is that the quality increases or decreases as we are told it should do. So we're also writing a few other helper functions that are going to compare the original quality or the original selling date and give us the list back. This is some helpers. And then once we have that, we can start writing our actual tests. Maybe something that was not clear is that we have all the items on the side, and as you can see, the only way that we can identify which item is what is by their name, so it's rather simple. We just have to parse the first word of the name of the item. So is everybody ready to go on? Yes, 3 people, I lost one. Okay. So the next thing is that we're going to start actually writing tests, and we're going to test that the quality of regular items actually decreases. So as you might have noticed, and as some people have said in the audience, testing is going to be the main thing that we're going to do before we're able to refactor. So that's about half of the code that we have to write. And I'm not going to explain all the testing details. If you want me to explain, I'm going to show them all. But if you want me to stop and explain one in more details, please raise your hand or shout or do something, because I cannot spend all my time explaining the test, or this is going to be very, very, very boring for everyone. So we've got our first test and it passes. Do we still have the video on the side there? Okay, great. So we've got our first test and it passes. This is the road to progress. Next thing to do is to test that quality degrades, but also the sell-by date degrades. It's almost exactly the same test. So while we are doing refactoring, let's refactor our tests and write a method that takes an attribute which will be what we want to measure and make sure that it decreases, and then call that. So let's run that, and it fails. Oh, that's not fun. Why does it fail? What does our cheat sheet say? Why would that fail? Oh, here this is the reason why. See, I memorized. I looked at it before. I knew where to search. So the age-free item actually increases in quality the older it gets. So that's one. There's also this one, the sulfurous. I didn't know it. The sulfurous never ages. It doesn't change. It doesn't decrease in quality. It never has to be sold. So this is our culprit. The other one is about quality, but this one is the one that is posing problem. So let's fix that. And so we need to declare another helper that's non-sulfurous item, so that's the item that do age correctly. And instead of testing on all items, we're just going to test on this one, on the non-sulfurous items. So let's go back to our test. We now have 2 tests passing. This is progress. I still got 2 people. I have to increase the speed of talking about the test. So we're going to be testing other stuff, like the regular items decrease in quality twice as fast when they are expired. And we've got 3 tests passing. Next one. Why does it stop there? We're going to test that the quality is never negative, because quality is something that doesn't go below 0. It's not worth anything, or it's worth something, but it's not worth minus something. French cheese. Who likes French cheese? Okay, quite a lot of people, about half of the people. So French cheese, you might know, it increases in quality. It's like wine when it gets older. So let's have a test for that too. And then we have all the other specific things, like the one we mentioned, the sulfurs that never changes. The backstage passes that are quite complicated. This is the most complicated test we have. The backstage passes, the increasing price in quality, the closer you get to the date of the concert, but after the concert, they're not worth anything. It all makes sense. So we've written all the tests for everything, and we now have 8 tests passing. This means that we can finally get started. Well, what time is it? It's been 20 minutes, so we spent 1/3 of our time just testing what we had. Now we can start actually doing some work. And the first thing we're going to do is to write a failing test. And so to write a failing test, we know what we have to know what we need to do. And so we have to add a new feature, this one. We have to be able to sell conjured items which degrade in quality twice as fast as the normal items. So that sounds easy, but none of you wants to touch the current code. I don't either. So let's first go back to here and write our test for conjured items. So I guess there are 2 different cases that we need to account for. We first have the non-expired items that need to decrease by 2, since they age twice as fast. And the expired one have to decrease by 4. I'm also adding some test data so that we have some more complete test data, and we can test that, and we can now see that we have our failing test. Yay! Thank you. I've never seen so many people upload for a failing test. Thank you. Next thing, and this is the second thing, you can see the threaded message there on the bottom right, live. So this may fail. I'm going to actually write the code for that. If you noticed something, we are dealing with items, and we already have an item class at the bottom of this file. What do you think we should do? How could we handle different things that are almost similar but act slightly differently? Subclasses, yes. And so since we have subclass, this means that we're going to have to shift the responsibility of aging from the main collection to each item. So that's what we're going to do right now. And I could very much delete all this code. I should at some point, but what I'm going to do for now is that I'm going to comment it out just in case there's something that goes awfully wrong and I have to take a look at it. I really don't want to do that, but just in case, I'm going to keep it and comment it out. And so since we know that we're going to do subclasses, what I want to do is I want to just start with item and define what does a regular item do. So let's see if you're still awake. What happens to the quality of a regular item every day? Decreases by 1. So def update quality self.quality minus equal 1. What happens to the selling date? Yeah, it decreases by 1. Selling, yes. Selling, sell by, it's so self.sell in minus equals 1. Okay, so that's for regular items, and we're going to start with that. And it should probably still, a few of our tests should probably still pass, but most likely not all of them. So let's see what happens. We have 6 failures. 6 failures out of 9. That's 1/3 of our tests passing. It's still good. I'm sorry, I cannot hear you. Okay. So the next thing that I remember for the definition is this one, and we're going to take them one by one. Once the sell-by date is passed, quality degrades twice as fast. We could do an if statement in the update quality, but that's, in the end, that would bring us back to where we started. So this is not really what we want. Does anybody has an idea how we could implement that?
We have a degrade method which calculates how much to degrade in each step.
Yes, exactly. So I'm going to say out loud. So what was proposed is a degrade method or property that would calculate by how much each item should degrade. And we can do that, and except that we're going to call that rate to know at which rates it degrades. So this here, we have a property rate now, and if the selling date is less than 0, then the rate is 2, otherwise the rate is 1. And every time that we update the quality, we update the quality by 1 times the rate. That's good. It's easy so far to do refactoring. So, 5 failures. We fixed something. Great. Next one. The quality of an item is never negative. Well, we can do something complex with a main or something, but we're just, in this case, we're going to add an if. So a simple test at the end of the update quality method. If the quality is under 0, we just put it back to 0. And 4 failures. Really easy so far. Does it get more complicated afterwards? Oops, at the right screen. The next thing we have to take care of is that French cheese again, which actually increases in quality. Can anybody have an idea on how to handle that? Subclass, yes, thank you. One people is still awake. Can you make some noise to tell me you're still awake? Okay. So, subclass, aged item here underneath it, and the decrement for that we're going to add a decrement property to regular items, and we're going to run the update quality with that property, and for aged item is going to be -1 instead of 1. So if we decrement by -1, we increment by 1, we make the quality go up. So this should work, shouldn't it? Oh. That doesn't work. Why?
It's the age degree speeding up the degradation. Is it doubling its increase of value once it's expired? And shouldn't do that?
No. We had 4 failing tests with 6 failing tests. It's probably because I didn't show you all the code. We know we have items. We need to get the proper class for those items. So I've added a method, and I'm going to show it to you. It's really hard to type something when you don't see it. So there's this get specialized item for, which is a helper method which will help us get the regular item, the item for the class. So now this means that we're making a copy of the original item, and we are updating the copy of the original item. And all our tests are done on the original item. So what we have to do to fix our tests is just make sure that we are testing on the copied items. So here, well, instead the code previously was for item in items, and items was fed to the original class, and now we are going to test for item in gr.items. So which means that we are going to actually do the test on the item that's updated. This is something that is that's very easy to get wrong when you do refactoring. You say, oh yeah, I'm going to do something different, I'm going to do subclass, and then you copy something, and you wonder why nothing is working anymore. It's because you're updating the copy, you're not updating the original. So you have to make sure that you test the right thing. So we're back to 4 failures. Okay, we're back to 4 failures. That's the problem, because we had 4 failures and we were trying to fix something. What else is wrong? Well, I could ask you, but I'm going to show you. It's easier. Here we have the test for quality of aged items that was failing, and now we still have 4 failures, but the third test that fails is that the quality is never over 50. So we actually solved the problem, but we created another one. So we're going to fix this quite easily. We're going to do with quality. It's never less than 0. Quality can never be over 50. If it is, we put it back to 50. Why did I use self.max quality in some places and 50 in other places? Because I didn't do that on purpose. But so does that solve anything? Yes, it solves it. We are now down to 3 failures. We're making huge progress. So the next thing is to write. Why am I showing you the answer already? You have to participate. I'm hiding the answer. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to read the next line. Sulfurous. Does anybody know what a sulfurous is? What is it? It's a helmet. Okay, thank you. I didn't. So they're legendary items, and they never have to be sold. How can we solve that? You've probably seen it. It's the update quality. Basically, during the update quality method, we have to do absolutely nothing. What do we do? Yes, subtype and override. So that's what we're going to do. That's probably the easiest thing to do. We subtype and we create an update quality method that does nothing. Okay, so that should bring us to 2 failing tests. Yes, 2 failing tests. So what was the last one? This is probably the more complicated one. It's the backstage passes. Backstage passes are complicated stuff. So this is probably going to be the most complicated part. I'm going to go relatively fast and tell you the answer. We are going to subclass and override the method. But we're not going to override everything. We have 2 different things to do. One, we have to increase the rate as time passes. And then we have something else to do. If the sell by date is over, the quality then drops to 0. So the way I chose to do that is to have if statements in the rate and just check the selling date in the update quality method and call the parent if the sell by is not passed. You probably, this is, a lot of you wanted to do the same thing as me. This is not the only way you can refactor that. This is the way I chose to do. This is the way the gentleman over there chose to do it, apparently, too, because he's been saying a lot of things right. But you can do that in other ways. You could have completely rewritten the update quality method and everything, but this is how I did it. So now do you remember at the beginning we said that we had, okay, so no, we only have one failure, we're back at the beginning. We now can start working. And do you remember that we said that we had text fixtures? So now it's a good time to check the fixture output and see if we have the same thing. We don't have the same thing, but if you look at the right part of the screen, I told you that I did add some fixtures. So the only differences between the two files are the fixtures, the 3 additional fixtures that I added. So this means that this worked. Great. Now I'm going to ask you again, now that we've done a lot of the work, how can we implement the last feature? By right? By changing the rate. Thank you. So we're going to try to do that. Okay. And this is where I messed up my script. I didn't want to solve this problem yet, because one thing I didn't show you and I didn't mention is that I got a little note here at the bottom. Feel free to make any change to the update quality method. Right? As long as everything still works correctly. However, do not alter the item class, or there is a goblin that's not going to be happy. We did change the item class. Oops. So did we write all this code for nothing? Or can we try to fix this in an easy way? Yes, we tried to fix it, but how? Okay, so here in Python, there's something that's, there's a design pattern that's quite easy to implement. It's called the proxy pattern. So everything that we wrote for the item class, we can just move it down to an item proxy class. And the item proxy, what it does is that it takes an item as an input. In the init method, it takes the item. And when you try to get the quality or the selling date on that item proxy, it's going to give you back the quality of its item. And when you try to set the quality or the selling date on that proxy, it's going to set it on the item. So what we're doing is that we're wrapping each item in a proxy. It's like if you want it, you put it in a big plastic bag, and when you look through the plastic bag, you see what's inside of it. But it's just inside the plastic bag. So we don't change the item class, we just wrap it in a proxy. And everything that we wrote, all the specialized class, they can be specialized proxy, and we can wrap any item in its own proxy. That way, we don't change anything to the item class. And the only other thing that we have to change to make this work is that we have to change this get specialized item method. And let it return an item proxy instead of returning an item. I guess I didn't explain this. So there's a regular expression. Who is familiar with regular expression? Okay, most of you. For those of you who are not, this basically means that you are taking the first word of the name of the item. That's what this regular expression means. Then we try to find a class that we are going to be using, and we can not use class with a C as a variable name because it's already used for something else. And the class is going to be item proxy if there is no first word in the name. There are some special cases that start with +5 and stuff like that, so there is no first word in the name. Or otherwise, we are going to look at all the variables, everything that is declared in the current module, and try to get an item proxy by that name, like aged item proxy or something like that. And if we cannot find it, the default value will be item proxy. So everything special, you give me the special proxy. Everything non-special, you give me the regular proxy. And so we can re-update our tests so that the test run on regular items as well as the fixtures, we can run them on items and we don't have to run them on gr.items. So that fixed our issue with the goblins, because who wants to have troubles with goblins? Okay, so now let's actually fix this and let's go back to the solution, which is so the fixture back there, which is to add different rate for our conjured items. And so all we have to do is to create a new class with a different rate. So the new feature, actually implementing the new feature is 2 lines of code. Only 2 lines of code. Everything that we've been doing for 45 minutes has been just getting us ready to do that. So why did we spend 45 minutes doing all that? Because we're going to keep working for that and nobody here wanted to touch that code. No, we did spend 45 minutes, which we would probably have spent to read what the method was doing and try to understand it. But now we have some clean code and know that we have to make a change. It's only 2 lines. And just to make sure, everything passes, the 9 tests pass. And finally, I'm a bit curious. You remember at the beginning, I ran the complexity test. So we get something that are a bit complex. We are getting a specialized class. We have a method for that. What is the complexity of the new code? A everywhere. So well, thank you. So of course, in real life code, A everywhere is something that you cannot achieve. You will probably not achieve that. It should not be a metric in itself to try to have all A's, but try to have as few D's, E, and F's as you can, and stay everything mostly in A and B and sometimes C. There are other things, there are other indexes that you can measure with Radon. I'm going to show you. So here we have been measuring the complexity. It's pretty simple. Every time you have an if or an else if, it's you add 1 point, and so that's how the complexity is measured, and then it makes some computation with the number of lines and everything. This library also gives you a maintainability index. I'm not going to explain that formula. That's something that's not useful for this kind of refactoring, but it's based on the number of lines in the file and the number of lines in methods. So it can be really helpful to have that. The tool is called Radon, R-A-D-O-N. You will have the link in the slides. And just to make sure, we can take a look at the side by side. We have a lot more items on the new code, but every new item is very simple. So now you see it side by side. And that's about it. So I was a bit fast. So we have time for questions.
If you have questions, please line up.
So, thank you. That was an example where you have like a really clear specification from the
Yes.
client. But what strategies do you use in order to get the specification out of the initial mess?
Okay, that's a very good question. The answer is it depends. If you have something that you trust in the organization, that you can go ask questions, you can go try to find this information. If all you have is a bunch of documents, you're better off trying to read the actual code, the current code, trying to understand it, and the parts that you don't understand, don't spend too much time trying to understand it. In this case, we had some fixtures. You probably have, in whatever context this is, you probably have some data, and you can just run the existing code on the existing data, see how it behaves, and try to guess the specification from that. Depending on your organization, there is somebody who should know these things, and who you can ask. Maybe it's not somebody you trust, but somebody from the business side. If you're in a large company, you're in the IT department, you're told to do that, you don't have all the specifications because someone left. Well, this is for the sales department. Get up, go to the sales department, find the person who's using this thing, and ask them, "Oh, is this supposed to work?" There is no miracle recipe. It really depends on where you work, in which context. But there is always at least somebody that has a vague idea of how it works. Either it's the final user, either it's your client that you might not be supposed to talk directly. You are supposed to talk to your manager. Don't call them, send them an email or something, but try to get in touch with the person who actually needs to use that code.
Hello. I have a question related to the business side of the justifications. So obviously, as an engineer, we wanted to always have the clean code. And then if you go to the client and look at the code, oh, your whole code need to be rewritten and refactored. So how do you handle that pressure, like business pressure? Say, you pay me the money, suppose I just add one feature. However, you in the end, you say, like this, every code need to be changed, and then they say, oh, I hire you just for adding one line, but you in the end you change everything and takes that long time, and then.
Once again, it depends. In the example that I gave at the beginning of the talk, the client hired me to make things more maintainable and faster. So rewriting is part of my job. When it is not explicitly part of your job, it's hard to justify that you spend three-fourths of your time refactoring something instead of actually working on the new feature. You don't have to rewrite the whole code of the client. Here, this was the whole code of the client. We rewrote almost everything. But most of the time, your feature, the feature that you're going to have to implement, is probably going to be one small portion, is going to involve one small portion of the code of the client. So the best way to go about it, and once again, it also depends on the client and they understand the need to have clean code and stuff. If they don't understand, just refactor as you need to. So you're writing a new feature, you really don't understand that method, refactor the little part that you don't understand, create the feature, and day by day, the code will get cleaner. That's usually how I do it when the client really doesn't want to hear anything. In my experience, and no, this is my experience, and it is different everywhere, but most clients, most end clients seem to be more and more aware that they need to have maintainable code. So it's easier now to tell the client that, hey, I'm going to do a little bit of maintenance on your code than it was maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Hello. Regarding the radon tool, is a static code analysis tool. I'm using SonarCube for my projects. How does radon act with Django functions and models and so on?
Usually, you get a B. You get a B for most models. It's hard to have models with A. It depends if you have fat models or skinny models. For everyone, fat models is where you have all the functionalities of the model inside the model. Skinny models is where you have a service that takes a model and changes the model when you want to, for example, mark an invoice as paid. So it depends. But if you have fat model, you can get away with B's and C's. Don't expect an A. And sometimes, if this is something really complicated, you might get 1D or something.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? If not, let's thank our speaker one more time.
Thank you.